Someday you will too. Hi, I'm Karl Morgenstern. I'm EWEB's Watershed Restoration Program Manager.
And I'm Joe Moll. I'm the Executive Director of the McKenzie River Trust. I came into this world through the wildlife side of things, and coming up in grad school and working in the late 80s, early 90s, so much attention was on endangered species. And that gets you the attention of a portion of the public. But when you just start talking about water, it gets everybody's attention. Man, that continues to be year after year the number one concern of Americans when it comes to environment broadly. It's water, the health of our water. And I think the synergy of our partnership has been around that recognition that through that lens of water, you touch everyone's lives. And you can bring in everyone from a beer producer to a diehard angler to a protector of headland forests to a daycare provider. I mean, it really is such a community resource. And I think one of the beautiful things about the way Karl has really led this partnership is he's been very quick to say, let's take the resources we can get and bring in the best that we can get. Growing the pie, so to speak, is something that we frequently talk about. Let's grow the pie of resources for all of us working collaboratively. And that's just been it's been a joy. You've been a great mentor to me in that and seeing what comes of that. And I think that for those of us who have worked with you over the years across the board, that's the legacy that you leave for sure. And it's something that continues on.
Well, it's interesting because when I started the source protection program for EWEB, my thinking was, oh, there's all this effort on endangered species and fish. We'll just hook our wagon to that. And then it's like, oh, that doesn't work. That creates controversy. And so, yeah, it's better to lead with water quality. And and that's what we've been doing together. Yeah, it takes a village when you look at the complexities of working in a watershed for the purposes of conserving habitat and water quality. There's so many threats that we're trying to address, and there's so little jurisdiction to do that in a way that you would think of like regulatorily or otherwise. So we take a voluntary approach and always have. And the history of the McKenzie River Trust, I mean, we helped start you guys back in
1989.
Yeah. And so it's a rich history, and one that I take a lot of pleasure in working with the MRT. Our other partners are as amazing as MRT, the Watershed Council, the Upper Willamette Soil and Water Conservation District, the Forest Service, so many that, it takes a coordinated effort because everybody has kind of a little piece of the puzzle in that watershed. And everybody, historically, people kind of work with their blinders on, focused on their little part of the world. And it's way too complex for that. If you really want to achieve things at scale and really make a difference, you really need to work across boundaries. You need to work in sharing resources and going after funding that allows us to do things across multiple ownerships and areas. So it's actually in my mind it's kind of a requirement. If you're actually going to try to protect a source water area, you need to take your time, go slow to go fast, build relationships and trust, and work with landowners and others in a way that's kind of collaborative, and that you develop win-win situations where what you get out of it, what you need, and they are able to get and see the benefits of what you're doing for what they want and what they need.
And those same people have become some of the strongest advocates for this work. So I think anytime you can stay engaged in a community, and not just a community of interest, but the broader community, and develop that mutual respect and trust and begin to address some of these thornier issues is just a great thing to be a part of.
Well, I think the thing that I'm most proud of that actually is happening but hasn't happened yet is the stage 0 floodplain restoration work we're doing in the middle McKenzie and extending that up into Quartz Creek, which has always been a source of turbidity in the McKenzie and has a history of basically contributing to water quality issues that immediately get diluted once it hits the McKenzie, but nonetheless is a source of concern for us from the beginning. And so everything that we've done with MRT after the fire has been amazing, fast. I'm sure it stressed your systems as much as it stressed ours. Mm-hmm. But to be as nimble as we were and trying to help get development out of the floodway in the way we did was really kind of amazing, I think.
Yeah, we had to respond quickly. I think it's also important to remember that, Karl and I, we get the interviews, we get the quotes quite often. And that's really not fair in some ways. There are hundreds of people that we work collectively with who are equally as important in all of this and in terms of implementing this. And I think, as you mentioned with the fire, just recognizing what the individuals in the PWP, the Pure Water Partners, took on in being side by side with landowners who had lost everything in the fire, and taking on that trauma in the name of drinking water quality and nature conservation. It really does show how inseparable this work is from simple community work. We are members of the community. And so I think that one sense of that growing the pie is that it goes beyond the protection of a particular resource or a particular species to, as you mentioned, community development and community wholeness in its broadest sense. And I feel really good about that. You've, again, left an incredible legacy in your wake on that.
Well put. Thank you. But that is so true, that the post-fire, the trauma that that all the project managers, like Joe said, there's so many people involved in this to make it successful. And when you take on that trauma, you end up taking that on yourself. And some it impacted really in a bad way, where they could no longer do the work and they had to quit. That's how bad it was after the fire. But it's amazing what the dedication and the professionalism and the empathy and that all the people in the Pure Water Partners and the other agencies and partners that we work with have demonstrated in this effort to recover after the fire. It's been a game changer.
Yeah, I think about the EWEB folks that are out after any disaster where water's lost, where power's lost, and they're responding in the middle of the night under really tough conditions with customers who are angry and impatient and scared. And there too, I always try to encourage our folks to recognize that that's a part of that response, that community, that immersion in the community is every bit a part of what we're doing as well, and to not forget that and to appreciate that. And so thank you to all of you who do that kind of work. I hope that you feel like this river nature associated conservation work is part and parcel of what you do when you're working on power lines and water lines that are breaking, because it's all one. There's no question, it's all one. And that's why it gets everyone's attention and everyone's support. That's been the other thing that, repeatedly, I know the folks at the university have done surveys of customers who have been asked, would you be willing to pay more to support more investment in drinking water protection? And the answer is always, heck yeah, we would. And I think that is just another example of how much community ownership there is in this concept, and in EWEB as a leader, as a leading utility for the region for this.
Well, I think one of the things that's obvious to me when you look at the crystal ball and what's happening and what we need to do to basically help us address what's going to hit us with climate change, whether it's floods or fires or droughts, is the work we're doing with the University of Oregon and with McKenzie River Trust on looking at how can we increase carbon sequestration in a way that provides co-benefits to habitat and water quality, especially in a post-fire landscape. And I know it's hard going to try and, it's like trying to build something as quick as you can, but you can't go too fast because it involves needing large areas of land like we have here now to basically apply research that's being done at our 140-acre High Banks Road research facility in a partnership with the University of Oregon. But I think carbon sequestration in a way that provides co-benefits is kind of where we need to go. and start moving into upland areas, create biodiversity in uplands as well as in floodplains, in a way that still, provides working jobs and timber and, working lands, but do it in a way that actually starts kind of reversing the trend that we've been on and start really doing things with carbon sequestration in mind, is where I think we need to head in many ways.
Yeah, the change in forest dynamics with fire I think we're only beginning to see what's coming. I mean, it's a tsunami of change in forest composition, and the impacts of that on water production and water storage, and our own decisions about gray infrastructure, dams, whatever, versus green infrastructure and these widened floodplains. Huge opportunities there. I think the other thing that will continue to come is people. We're going to have more and more people with equally wanting to love this place the way that we do, but also to use these resources the way that we are as well. And so, how's this going to look when we have double the population in 30 years, 50 years?
Right.
Certainly 100 years, there'll be far more, because we have such a tremendous resource and a tremendous source of water. Mm-hmm. So specifically for this area, I mean, I think one of the things that, if you said, hey, we're going to make a beer out of water coming straight out of the Coast Fork, people would say, okay, but we should get to the point where people are like, heck yeah, that's great. And I think anything that we can do through all of these programs to help buffer inputs to the river, which influence that water quality, and it's going to be a heavy lift, but for the Coast and Middle Fork to have the same pride that we have around the quality of the water in the McKenzie someday, that's one of the goals. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we never thought of, but now we are engaging in full force, is looking at trying to reduce the risk of fire and to not only our infrastructure, but to communities and so forth. And so we are diving in with both feet into that arena with the Trust, with the Watershed Council, with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and the Forest Service, and BLM, and industrial timber owners. And it's interesting because their framework or their viewpoint is we need to get trees out of the woods, basically. And what I've been trying to push the message in the kind of the forums that I'm engaging in, that it's not getting just vegetation out. How about if we keep more water in the landscape? How about if we have floodplains that are reconnected and wet, they're great fire breaks? Or how about if we increase wetlands? Or how about if we put in large wood in tributaries that kind of slows down flow and creates that then you could tie that into other things. But and it's actually I think we're getting some traction in that with Oregon Department of Forestry and others that always just thought, well, we need to put a fire break, we're going to just remove all vegetation. It's like, well, that only gets you so far.
It's true. Yeah, the fact and the fact that you can be at a table like that a representative on drinking water protection can be at a table to talk about forest policy and forest management, not just policy, but practice. What do we do on the ground? I think that's a great sign of, as contentious as it can be in Western Oregon and anywhere in the West, the fact that we have tables where we're gathering and having those conversations, that's a great sign. Yeah. Because if the alternative of being at our respective tables lobbing, accusations at each other is what's happening in DC and places, and that's not helpful. Yeah. And so we do, we've got a good forum here. We've got a level of trust and a level of recognition, again, of the broader community that I think is something to build on. It's really something to build on.
Yeah, it's really, it's unique, to be honest. I know you travel everywhere, and I do too. And when you go to other places, they don't have this trust and these partnerships where you can have those conversations and listen to each other and actually work together. It's like, it's very rare. All right, I feel good. You feel good?
Only don't feel good that you're leaving, but you've earned it.